Coming up on TekThing, password managers, passwords, two-factor authentication, and ponies. It's a very secure episode of TekThing. If you get something useful out of this episode of TekThing, please consider contributing to the show at patreon.com/TekThing. We're brought to you by viewers just like you. Thank you so much.
I'm Shannon Morse.
And I'm Patrick Norton.
And this is TekThing, where we make technology behave.
But today we secure your technology.
That's right, we do, because guess what? I am currently in Japan. Hopefully happily snapping away at all the things, including geeking out at sushi and eating all the noodles and the ramen and checking out all the anime museums, including the Sailor Moon exhibition, of course, which is happening in Roppongi. So excited. And Akihabara, because why not? Oh, and all the temples too. Well, you get the idea.
Feeding the deer.
I'm very excited. So we are pre-recording this episode.
Yeah. Or we pre-recorded this episode.
Yes.
This episode was created in the past. We decided to make a theme episode, and that theme is passwords and password managers.
And two-factor authentication. So we're going to talk about all the things, because all of these things work together to protect you, your data, your finances, your Snapchat, your Facebook, and your Twitter accounts, and all those important accounts.
And your email.
And your email.
Which is the control center for many of the tools you use to run your life. Seriously, or getting your life ruined because you use the same password for www.thissocialsite.hacked.com because they didn't spend anything on security and your email account. Be very, very careful with your email password, because it is the key to ending your online reputation, life, and or future as you know it.
So are you saying that I should not share my password with my boyfriend?
Never share a password with your girlfriend or boyfriend, period. It doesn't prove you love them. It proves that they're manipulative little gits that you should dump immediately.
What about your parents?
Till you're 18, parents should probably have your passwords, because you probably don't realize that that really hot chick in Alaska is actually a 35-year-old man that's chatting in the background. Look, under 18, your parents should probably have access to your passwords, because they may actually be more aware of people being predatory than you are, especially if you're cute. It's a thing. I don't like it, but it'll be fun to watch my kids try to hide their passwords from me.
I have a feeling when I was 12 and the 12-year-old boy that I was talking to in New Jersey or something was actually an adult man that was on a cartoon chat room. You never know.
Look, and we're not getting all stranger danger, don't talk to strangers, because I teach my kids how to talk to strangers. I also teach them not to get too near to the open doors of cars with people they don't know inside of them. It's a balance.
In any case,
let's talk about two things, or one thing really. Seriously, first up, good passwords, and why most of us need a good password manager to remember those passwords for us. So, let's talk about what actually makes a good password.
Well, I would recommend checking out KrebsOnSecurity. This is the ever so awesome KrebsOnSecurity blog. Has as good a set of rules as pretty much any that I've seen. So first off, create unique passwords that can use a combination of words, numbers, symbols, and both uppercase and lowercase letters, not just one or the other, because hey, case sensitivity definitely helps. Do not use your network username as your password. I'm ridiculously sad for people that do that, because why would you ever? Don't do that. Just no. Moving on.
Don't use easily guessed passwords such as password or user or 1234.
Don't do that.
No.
Do not choose passwords based upon details that might not be as confidential as you would expect, such as your birth date, your social security, your phone number, names of your family members, because guess what? All of that stuff is also available on your Facebook, at least the family members part is. And then social security numbers, who knows? Were you a part of the OPM hack? Because guess what? Everybody has your social security number now.
Or did you work for a nefarious boss that maybe wasn't as decent a human being as you thought they were?
Make sure you're not using words that can be found in a dictionary. Password cracking tools, a lot of rainbow tables, for example. Those tools are freely available online to download. It's usually a long list of commonly used words that often come with dictionary lists that will try thousands upon thousands of common names and passwords. So if you must use dictionary words, try adding a number to them, as well as punctuation at the beginning or at the end of the word, or both, for example. Yeah. For another great example is LeetSpeak. If you've never heard of LeetSpeak, look it up and use it. It's a great thing for passwords.
Oh my goodness. Avoid using simple adjacent keyboard combinations. For example, QWERTY.
Yeah.
And ASDZXC and 123456 are horrible passwords that are trivial to crack and very quickly checked in those giant rainbow tables full of passwordy wrath. And again, we are directly quoting KrebsOnSecurity.com, password do's and don'ts. Krebs is an amazing resource. If you are interested in security, I suggest you regularly check into this man's blog. It is outstanding.
Ooh, and another one you can use is phrases. Long, long phrases that nobody could guess in their lifetime.
Well, let's hold on for that for a second, right? Because 9DMH, capital EU, capital VX9 WS1, or 8 lowercase t, 7Z, 218 ***, those are really good passwords.
Yeah, those are very good.
So is, oddly enough, now is the time for all silly aardvarks to aid their Zork.
That's a really good password.
Might be a little long for most accounts, but in the word of Krebs, just remember each character you add to a password or passphrase makes it in order of magnitude harder to attack via brute force methods.
Yeah. And keep in mind those spaces that you would have in a long phrase password, those are included as characters. So they are a part of that password.
That's awesome. I might use something like that phrase for my password manager.
Yes.
Not that phrase, but a long phrase that I know and no one else does, except for the lawyer in case of my sudden and untimely demise.
Aw, so
Wow.
for most folks, you'll find that 8 or 12 or 20 character crazy random mixtures of letters and numbers and symbols, upper and lowercase letters, they're really, really hard to memorize. Hence the fact that we have password managers. So we have LastPass, KeePass is another example, there's 1Password, there's a lot of them available out there. Now they provide a hopefully secure location where you can access all the passwords that you need for all of the accounts that you have, ensuring that you have different passwords for each, and anytime you're logged in on any device. So you would be good to go.
Yeah, managing all the passwords in all of the places.
All the passwords in all the places. Personally, I choose to use a password manager for sites that I don't visit every single day. So things like shopping, blogs, forums, stuff like that. But when it comes to social networks, banking, and email, I choose to remember those with Two Factor. And we'll go to Two Factor later on in the show.
Two Factor Authentication is awesome.
Yeah.
In any case, password managers for the vast majority of us are a good idea. We both use them. I use them more extensively than Shannon does because I'm old and my memory's shot, and the children and the numbers. Security professionals like Bruce Schneier, and if there is a Hall of Fame for security, he's in there, has been saying, for example, for years, that you should write down your passwords and keep them hidden, say in your wallet, if you can't remember complex enough passwords.
Oh, so interesting.
Well, it's funny, because to read this, right, Bruce Schneier wrote this back in like 2005.
Right.
And it's been funny because I was talking to a friend of ours he does pen testing for a living. That means he breaks into giant, heavily defended corporate networks to explain to them where their flaws are and how to fix them so they can be more secure to protect your information and their information. He's actually been suggesting to certain relatives that they have a book with the passwords in them.
Yeah.
Now, you know.
Well, at least then it's air-gapped.
Yes. and it's not on the computer.
Yeah.
Right? And it's not taped to the computer. Like, you don't want to have like the
it's
passwords.
It's in a separate place.
Yeah. It could be, Bruce Schneier suggests your wallet, right? Because if your wallet gets stolen, your life is over. And you don't list like Facebook and the Facebook password and bank account and the bank account password. You can probably figure out a creative way around that. But use good passwords even if you have to jump through hoops to use them, because barring total corporate suckitude like Ashley Madison, we secured a bunch of stuff, I think. Well, that's an extreme example, right?
It is, but it's true.
Yeah, but that's also what we mentioned before. Don't use the same password for multiple accounts. It's painful because you opened up like, oh, I want to check out this free photo website, and you use the same, email account. So you use the same password for that as your email account or your bank. That's bad. Mm-hmm. Most of us, how many accounts, how many password accounts do you have at this point?
How many passwords do I have?
Yeah.
Like specifically? Probably hundreds.
Yeah, literally.
Because each and every one, there's still an old password that I use just floating around that I use commonly for like test sites, which is a terrible idea, but I do it because I'm like, I don't want to save this. I'm never going to use it again. I'm just testing it for the show or whatever. But Otherwise,
I have 40
hundreds
that I use on a monthly basis.
Oh, wow. On a monthly basis, I'm probably, I don't know, 50 to 75 that I use
Because you
very
think about it,
often.
right? You may not be particularly worried about Netflix or Showtime or HBO Go, but they start to add up after a while.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, and by the way, password managers, if you have, say, an account that is shared between you and your family members, you can use those to manage sharing and changing passwords so that you can update them when necessary.
Super awesome. So, of course, this entire episode, again, is all about passwords, because it's so important to be secure and private online and not share that stuff everywhere. So if you guys have a password manager that you love to use, or you have something that we don't necessarily discuss in this episode as a whole that you want to share with us, send us an email, ask@tekthing.com, and we'll definitely check it out.
And right now we're going to talk about LastPass and KeePass and migrating between password managers, which is a thing, people. We are so grateful for the folks that support the show by contributing at patreon.com/TekThing. $1 a show, $1 a show. You can help keep TekThing coming each and every week, because every little bit helps keep it all going. If you can't donate, no worries. Please take the time to send us your questions, your tips, and to share the show with your friends and family. It all helps keep the show going, and we appreciate your efforts. Thank you so much for supporting the show. LastPass, KeePass, Dashlane, 1Password, RoboForm. What do these all have in common?
I know. They're all password managers.
You are absolutely correct.
Yes.
What do?
They store your passwords.
Well, yeah, they store your passwords, right? They help you make strong passwords. They help you store them securely. They auto-enter them when you load websites. They've evolved a lot, yet they basically all do the same, right? When you look at KeePass and 1Password, they're a little bit different because they store your passwords locally. The more sophisticated of the two would be 1Password. It started out, cut to the screen really quickly. In 3, 2, would be 1Password. It started out on Mac, but now there's Windows 10, Android, and iOS versions. The thing about this one that might be a little traumatic for some people is the cost. It depends how you look at it, right? $65 for a one-time purchase. Which means you only pay once, or $5 monthly for a family of up to 5 people. The thing you have to remember about that is the mobile versions. With the families version, you get the full versions of the mobile versions. With the prepaid version, you're going to pay like $8 or $10 for the mobile apps on that. That's something to remember, because it's $65, but then you have to buy additional stuff if you want to do it on.
Yeah, it gets pricey, but it's all at once. So if you save up for it, it might be a good deal for you.
Notice the difference between the 1Password website and the KeePass password safe website. I'm not trying to trash talk KeePass, but KeePass is open source.
Yay!
In the best and worst senses. It is incredibly customizable. There is no fee ever. There's also no native web component or mobile clients, though third parties have taken the open source code and ported it to iOS, Android, and all that good stuff. So KeePass, it's kind of funny. The first challenge you have with KeePass is, should I do version 1 or version 2? Right? There's like 1.31 and 2.32. Both of these are in development. Both of these are moving forward. You probably, if you're starting it for the first time, should use KeePass 2. Whatever is up. KeePass requires you to get your DIY on more than any of the other applications. By the way, like I said, you probably want 2 if you're installing it for the first time. And the whole point of KeePass and 1Password is, if you're even more
storing
paranoid,
passwords.
Yeah, well,
locally.
That's the part, right? If you are too paranoid to trust the internet or a company that moves incredibly encrypted and locked down files around the internet, KeePass and 1Pass, there for you.
I think my first introduction to password managers was KeePass, but I was so new to the idea of open source that I didn't fully understand how to integrate it with all my different platforms. So I was just like, LastPass.
Yeah, well,
but now I understand how to use it, so it's much easier to get around their website, and it's much easier to port it to all the different mobile platforms too.
It's a good thing. Take a look at the KeePass plugin and extensions. If
Jeez.
There is a lot of these are like, okay, these are all for importing from different applications. There is a lot of options going on there, so that is like a classic. That is a classic open source opportunity to learn all the things. The funny thing is despite the fact that 1Password and KeePass are both, they're all about, my passwords are safe on my computer and not on the dirty, filthy cloud. You can actually sync multiple machines by storing your passwords on Dropbox or some other cloud service. Encrypted, yes.
That's what one of my friends did in college. He just encrypted a whole drive of his passwords, or it was a file in this case, and he would use that across multiple platforms, but he did it on a flash drive.
Right.
And he had the flash drive encrypted as well. So it was two different forms of encryption that he was using, but it worked for him. It didn't work for me, because I lose flash drives.
That would be awkward. Well, say if it's encrypted, not as awkward. We did a story on ThreatWire a few weeks ago where this University of Illinois college students basically sprinkled 300 flash drives around a campus, and more than 50% of them were picked up and stuffed into a computer. Don't do that. So those are the first two. LastPass, Dashlane, and RoboForm are all about being online and syncing passwords across multiple machines. They all offer password capture, as in, do you want me to remember this website password? In KeePass, you get this big green, in LastPass, you get this big green bar across the top.
Yes.
It's like, you want me to remember this one?
And then I'm like, no, this is just a test website. Leave me alone, LastPass.
Oh my goodness. They all do auto entry. They do password generation. Most of them will save data like your address, credit card numbers, all that good stuff. RoboForm is the grandmama of them all. It goes back to like 1999.
Wow.
Yeah, most folks use it because they've been using it for approximately forever. It's also incredibly simple. The new hotness is RoboForm Everywhere, which essentially works across all of your desktops and mobile machines. The regular versions of RoboForm for your desktop are $30.
So in this case, you have to pay for it.
Yeah, $10 for the first year, $20 for every year after that if you want to do work on mobile, which actually isn't that bad of a price, especially when you take a look at Dashlane. Now, Dashlane made LastPass's interface look awful until LastPass finally redesigned. Okay, I think Dashlane in some ways is still in the lead in terms of having a smooth and stylish interface. It'll let you actually ignore online syncing and store locally only if you want to.
That's cool.
Yeah, what's also really, really cool is they finally, cancel, stop the download. They finally added a free version, right? It's normally $40 a year, which is a lot of money for a password manager. But Dashlane Free will actually let you store your passwords locally on one device. You just can't actually back it up or sync across your devices. You can share up to 5 items, though. There's no web access to your passwords. So it's a very simplified version of Dashlane that basically makes it function like a much prettier version of KeePass or 1Password. LastPass is what Shannon and I both currently use. It's available on Windows, Mac, Linux, iOS, or Android.
All the things.
Yeah, it's free for all the things. It's $12 a year if you want unlimited sync on unlimited devices. Which for me, given that I have a desktop at home, a desktop at work, a laptop, a mobile phone, an Android mobile phone, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It starts to add up.
I had the same exact problem, and I need something that's simplified and that's very fast to implement, and LastPass is it.
Yeah.
Although I will say, and I will clarify, I've said it before, but I don't store all of my passwords in LastPass because I am relying on that company and their security. So I don't store my email, I don't store banking, and I don't store social networks in there. I use Two Factor Authentication for all of those.
Yeah, well, I use Two Factor Authentication for everything, so I am okay with storing. Like, I don't store my principal email passwords anywhere.
Yeah, so me neither. Don't do that. It's
if
not
I
a good
forget
idea.
them, I'll take advantage of whatever. In any case, before I tell somebody what page of what book to read.
So basically,
to find my password.
LastPass works.
Yeah, LastPass works. Well, it's been a tough year for LastPass, right?
Yeah.
A lot of people were really upset last year because they were bought by LogMeIn. LogMeIn used to do like the free access, and then they finally went from we'll give you this free forever to charging for it, which upset a lot of people. Yes. LastPass also had a breach last year,
which we reported on ThreatWire.
We did. Actually, we talked about it here too because we both had recommended LastPass. What was interesting about the LastPass breach is, unlike many other companies, they were like, "We had a breach. This is what happened. This is why we don't think your data is at risk. This is what you should do. Do it immediately." That's really cool, and which reminds me of one of the features you find on some of the password managers where they'll basically warn you, like, this site was compromised, change your password. This password sucks. You know, you should, like when LastPass does a security audit, you know, where it's basically like, hey, this password is atrocious. You should be embarrassed of yourself.
And they
Change it.
also did like back in the day when Heartbleed came out, they had a whole like Heartbleed update. This is the sites that were compromised, and you should update your passwords on these sites. So it was nice that they implemented that, and that's something that you're going to get with a company who has like venture capitalists and stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, I like it. It works. And I'm not quite ready to leave it. Because if I left it, it would probably be for KeyPass, and I'm just not ready for that kind of commitment.
Oh, do it.
Oh, do it.
It'll be awesome.
We'll talk about that in a second. So Shannon, you might be wondering how to move your incredibly important personal data off of LastPass. Well, you know, you can go in and look at individual entries and edit them, right? That's kind of the whole point of password.
That's going to take forever.
Exactly. So what pretty much all decent, civilized password managers do, which I'm pretty sure covers all the ones we've mentioned so far, will allow you to import or export data. Or I should say export. And exporting in a format that other things can read, I think, is actually more important than importing.
Yes, absolutely.
You know, so in terms of LastPass, which is what I'm familiar with, this is, I'm only going to do this up to a point because I love you guys, but I don't love you that much to show you all my passwords. And by the way, we've said it before, I'll say it again. If someone asks you to share your password to prove that like you love them and are not cheating on them, get out of the relationship or stop cheating.
Same with jobs.
Yeah.
Just don't give them your passwords.
Don't. That's just creepy. In any case, so if you go to LastPass, right, you've got the little LastPass icon up in the corner. And we're going to go into more options, and then we're going to go to advanced, and we're going to, ta-da!
Export!
Export! And for most things, you're going to choose a LastPass CSV file. And right about here is where I'm going to stop, because the next thing that happens, right, is you enter your master password here, and you get a giant window full of everything that LastPass knows about you.
It's kind of scary.
It's a little unsettling. We're like, wow, look at all those passwords and usernames and logins. Don't panic. I'm going to quote LastPass here. Copy and paste this data into a plain text file, e.g. Notepad or TextEdit, then save the file as a .csv file, and make sure you change the encoding to Unicode as opposed to ANSI. And I'm going to add in, do not leave this lying around.
Yeah.
Do not erase it before you import it into another password manager. And that process is always, you basically have to look at the data and be like, okay, it's this, and then this, and then this, and then this, right?
Yeah.
Because, you know, you've got this and a comma, and this and a comma, so it could be.
Oh, yeah,
know,
so any other CSV file.
Right.
File.
But if you don't do it right, you will end up with your passwords where your name should be and your names where your password should be, and it's
super
just,
screwy data.
Yeah. So do not erase that file before you import it into another password manager. And do not delete your LastPass or any other online account until you're happy with your new password manager.
Yes.
There's nothing.
2 is 1, 1 is none.
Yeah, or more importantly, like you'd be like, yeah, I'm going to the new hotness, and then you get to the new hotness, and maybe it doesn't work with something that's critical for you, or maybe there's one little feature that it doesn't have that drives you insane. Just take your time.
Yeah.
There'll be plenty of time to wipe things in an unrestorable fashion later. Just don't leave that CSV file laying around. One of the ways I protect my primary email account is two-factor authentication. It's also called multi-factor authentication. It's when you have to do something like get a text message to your phone to be able to open up your email account on a new machine.
Yay!
Let us discuss.
Let us discuss. So oftentimes, such as Patrick just said, you will hear those two terms being used synonymously. But in reality, two-factor authentication is not the same as multi-factor authentication because 2FA, two-factor authentication, is actually a type of multi-factor authentication.
Oh my goodness.
It's kind of weird, huh?
Is
a little
this
confusing.
like HTML and SGML? HTML is an SGML, but an SGML isn't necessarily an HTML. I'm
Yes,
talking about hypertext markup language.
That's exactly what it is. So two-factor authentication consists of 2 different types of authentication to allow a transaction or a login to occur correctly and securely. So to make two-factor authentication work, you need 2 of 2 different things. So either something you have,
like a key fob.
yeah,
or
something.
a phone.
Exactly.
Or a list of passwords
There
you
you go.
printed out.
And then something you know.
Okay.
So that would be like your password, or something you are. So for ATM machines, for example, you need a physical card, and then you also need your PIN code, which is, I point at my head, that's because it's in my brain. So it's something you have and something you know.
That's 2 factors.
Yeah, that's 2 factors.
2 factor authentication.
So companies have enabled 2 factor authentications on tons and tons of different sites, because oftentimes a thief won't be able to supply 2 different forms of authentication. Like if they steal your banking card, they're not going to know what your PIN card is unless they know you personally. And hopefully your PIN card.
What is your PIN account? What is your PIN account? Generally speaking, it doesn't happen if they just
I don't think they're going to do that.
But
in that case, an ATM card is a perfect example. You know, you have your physical and then something you know. Some common forms of something you have would include that bank card, a 2-factor authentication key such as a Yubikey, a USB drive with a specific key on it. Something you know could be a password, it could be your PIN code, it could be something you something you are, that's the last one. That would be like a biometric key. Like when you pull out your phone and you have to use a fingerprint. That's just 1 factor, but it's using a biometric key instead of a password. So in that case, it's something you are. Now in the case of authenticator apps, and that's like Google Authenticator is an example. There's Authy, there's Duo, and then LastPass just came out with one. And I'll do a whole separate segment about the comparisons between those.
There's a lot going on there.
Oh yeah. So in that case, a user would get a one-time use code that is considered the something that they have, because they have it on their smartphone. And then the something they know, in that case, is the password. Now you have to make sure that when you're using 2-factor authentication that no one can get your something that you have. So an example of this would be if your phone is stolen, you would lose the authentication key.
Which is why Google gives you the ability to pre-print out passwords or to access it from other places, which is a big deal. You need to think about this before it happens, especially in case if if all of your text messages show up on the front screen of your phone, then magically, magically someone's going to have your 2-factor authentication, which might sound like, well, nobody's going to do that, but let's say somebody actually manages to pick up your bag in the airport, boogie on out the door, hop into a waiting car, and if your laptop isn't physically secured by isn't secured by a password, then they have access to all the things to do all the things. So you have to use a password on your laptop, you have to use a password on your phone, you have to make sure important information that allows you to unsecure other devices isn't on your phone. You know what I mean? Like this stuff, it's layers.
So if you use a physical device for 2-factor authentication, just keep in mind, if something happened to that, like it could get lost or it could get damaged. And if that case happens, think about how can you protect yourself, not only from that happening in the first place, but if that does happen, what you would do in that case. Now, if you use a protocol that is not safe as your second authentication, it could be stolen in transit. So for example, SMS text messages, a lot of people in a lot of companies still use that as their 2-factor authentication as the something they have. Now, SMS texts are not as secure unless you use a third-party application like Signal for all of your text messages, because Signal is encrypted, but just SMS over the air to and from your carrier, those are not necessarily encrypted. They can be intercepted, and it has been proven.
Yeah, and before you think to yourself, you know, Snubs and Pat, they're trying to protect terrorists. Actually, it's amazing the amount of money that's being spent on corporate espionage, probably within 50 miles of us down in Silicon Valley. And if somebody can extract information from the air merely by setting up an antenna in a hotel room next to a very large multinational internet company, I bet they are. You know, sounds ridiculous, but you know, I'm not particularly worried about my 2-factor authentication being stolen out of the ether off an SMS password. You may be running a business where that could be an actual issue. Think about it.
And then there goes all your money from your checking account.
Or at least there goes your reputation, you know, internationally.
That too. So there's another form of the something you have, and that is a hardware token. So in this case, I use something called a Yubikey, and I'll show you the website here. So these are for logging into important sites. And then in this case, my password is the something that I know in my brain, and then my Yubikey is the something I have. Now it looks like a USB thumb drive because that's exactly what you do with it. You stick it into your computer when you get to the login site, when it asks you for your physical key, and then it logs you in as soon as you touch the little button on the top of it.
So 1,000 years ago, when the only companies that could afford to do this, that needed to do this, were like giant banking firms.
Oh, yeah.
Where a friend of mine worked at a giant banking firm in New York City. He had a physical key that generated like a code.
And it would just
every
keep on
5
generating
seconds.
codes over a time basis. So the cons on hardware tokens is it's really easy to lose because it's a physical key.
Yeah.
So if you keep one away from you all the time, it's you know, it might get lost or you might forget it at home or something like that. And it's not something that you'll have on you all the time. So that's a big problem with hardware tokens. But on the pro side though, for the Yubikey specifically, so far it has not been hacked.
Yay.
It's also much cheaper to replace a physical Yubikey because these are as low as $18 for a key. That's a lot cheaper than replacing your stolen phone. So, you know, keep that in mind.
You'll still have to replace your phone. But,
oh, yeah.
Well, the other thing is like phones are targets for being stolen, right?
They are.
So if your phone gets stolen and that makes it difficult for you to access all of your information, again, you should have had a plan in place. You should have those passwords. They shouldn't necessarily, those you know, like Google Authenticator passwords or whatever you need. You know, don't necessarily put all of those, you know, in the bag with you that's going to get stolen because you're having a tremendously bad day commuting on Muni.
No, so in the case of these, if it does end up getting stolen or it gets lost or you forget it at home or something like that and you have to log into a site, most sites will offer some kind of backup option. Like you could get a second Yubikey for logging into LastPass, for example, and they will allow you to use that second Yubikey in case the first one got lost. Or you could use a authentication app on your smartphone as the backup option. So those are a couple of choices that you would have in that case. But Yubikey is not the only hardware option that you have for hardware tokens. Yeah, it's just one of many. So of course you have Yubikey, and those are at yubico.com. And then you have other ones like RSA. So RSA has this thing called the Secure ID token. And if I scroll down, you can see an example of what one looks like. So in this case, it's not a USB thumb drive. It randomly generates these tokens, and then you have to type it in physically to your computer, your login screen. So in this case, they were hacked back in 2011. Some hacker, I don't remember who it was, but they were able to figure out and decrypt how the numbers were generated and be able to predict future numbers.
That's been fixed?
Yeah, it's been fixed. Obviously, they're still selling it. So they did fix that security issue, and they created further ones.
Don't always assume, though, that just because somebody's found out about a security issue on their website or product that they'll actually fix it. If you don't believe me, go check your router and see what last time the software was updated. Oh, that was crazy.
No kidding. And then the last one I did want to mention, too, is from a company called 2FA1. So in this case, they sell little PKI USB tokens, which are basically the same thing. It's public key infrastructure data encryption technology. I could get into that in a whole nother segment, but these work pretty much the same way. You get a key and then you have to put it into your computer, and then it'll actually let you log in. There are a few more out there, but there's not many hardware tokens to choose from at the moment. Most people are going towards smartphone apps because it's more convenient, even though these guys offer a little bit more security when you think about the fact that chances are they won't get lost. And you could leave it in a safe or something if you really wanted to. Yeah,
well, two-factor authentication is something that a lot of people still don't know about, and it's a lot like flood insurance. You know, where my folks live in the Jersey Shore, I don't need flood insurance, and then the house gets wiped out by 3 feet of water, and people think like, you know, I should have had flood insurance. The time to get flood insurance is before the hurricane.
I use two-factor authentication and really, really weird, randomly generic passwords or randomly generated passwords everywhere that I can. And if a site doesn't have two-factor authentication, I am highly skeptical about it, and I think twice about actually setting up a username and password on that site.
I think we're going to find out over the next couple of years that two-factor authentication is going to become more and more common and more of a standard.
I hope so.
You know, it has sort of started its way in banking and Google email and other places, and is trickling its way down. And I hope it does become standard, and I hope we figure out better ways to manage passwords, and I hope we figure out how to do something that's better than a password in the future, although I don't know what entirely that's going to be or when that's going to come. But
I think that's it.
Well, we got one last thing to do.
Yes, we do. Because remember, we can't walk away with telling you what to do. as far as analog goes. So, you know, put away your laptop, put away your phone, maybe leave it on your desk for 2 seconds and do something analog, like go fishing. And hopefully you're going so far out of range from any cell phone carriers that there's no point in having your cell phone on you. So just go fishing and have a good time.
You mean fishing like with a rod and reel, not fishing like PH?
No.
Okay.
Rod and reel. Go fly fishing, go deep sea fishing, go fishing.
Your Missouri is showing.
Sorry.
Oh my goodness. I'm Patrick Norton.
I'm Shannon Morse.
We'll see you next week on TekThing.
I'm in Japan.
I wonder if you're using Two Factor Authentication in Japan right now.
Of course I am.
That's our Mystic Wipe.
Super mystic.
California Misto in the house. Oh my goodness.
It's fun stuff.
I can't believe you're not here in Japan. This is so realistic.
I can't believe you're not.
Oh wait, you are here.
Oh.
Oh wait, she hasn't left yet. This is hard, this whole time shifting thing.
I'm confused.
I don't understand. You're here, you're not here, do the Mystic Wave again.
We're like the Doctor.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, each and every one of you. Sorry about that set. For supporting us because you make TekThing happen. And thank you so much for watching the show. Oh my goodness.
We love you guys. He's on vacation somewhere.